I've met most of you, but for those who I haven't met, nice to meet you. I'm the executive director of Altacal Audubon Society. Been in this role since March and have been loving it. I've been loving doing all of this work with all these different people and protecting the birds and educating on the public on birds and the children on birds. So yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about what Altacal has been up to the past year. So our education program has really been growing. And I see some people in the audience who've been volunteering with our education program over the past year. And I'm excited to report that just in 2024 alone, since the beginning of the year, we've actually served over 1,000 students in Butte Glen and Tehama County, serving elementary school, all ages. And that's a mix of classroom education as well as outdoor education, doing field trips, experiential learning, going to libraries and hosting story times. As well as going to festivals and having booths and teaching the children about birds or different things about their habitats or relating to nesting, teaching all this amazing information to the children to get them to appreciate the birds because they're so important for all of us. And it's important to learn about it, to understand them. And yeah, we also have had a really successful year with our scholarship program, giving scholarships to high school graduates, thanks to the donation of Elizabeth I. Brown, who bequeathed some funds to Altacal. She was able to have this awesome scholarship program that also was able to send children to summer camps. So we've been partnering with 6 different summer camps and working with them to use the scholarship funds to send children to these camps to give them outdoor learning opportunities that they might not otherwise have. In addition, we've also been working to protect bird habitat as well as restore it. You guys might remember Valley's Edge was a big issue in the last year or two. And we did research and analyzed the impacts to the birds, to the bird habitat, wrote public comments to the city of Chico, working with them to make sure that they adequately understood the negative impacts. And in addition to protection of habitat, we also have had success advocating for a habitat restoration project just at the end of where Chico Creek and Mud Creek flow into the river. There's a 43-acre site there, and just a couple weeks ago they approved that. So that's been really exciting. We'll see the native riparian trees like the cottonwoods and willows go in soon, and yeah, so that's really exciting. It's really exciting. They might. Well, they're making habitat, so maybe the beaver is going to find some space to live there. So yeah, it's really exciting to have more opportunity for wildlife, more habitat. I've seen them. We saw them on a trip that Altacal led to the Indian fishery. We saw a beaver in the Indian fishery there in the Oxbow Lake. Also, we've been doing a lot of good citizen science projects. All of our bird trips that we lead, we're collecting eBird checklists, contributing to that citizen science endeavor so the scientists are able to monitor changes in bird populations, changes in migrations, and intervene when we need to protect the birds. And as well as the Christmas bird count we've been doing for many, many years. And a little bit next level beyond citizen science is the Saw-Whet Owl program that Ken Soban is the director of. Really exciting. And so they're going to be doing research again this fall after the park fire and looking at how long it takes for the owls to come back. You know, it'll be really interesting to get that data. Yeah, Snow Goose Festival. Jennifer and I have started working on it. We're getting the ball rolling, going out to Patrick's Ranch tomorrow. And I'm really excited for the 25th year of the Snow Goose Festival. 25th year. Really exciting. Really awesome festival. People flock here for it. Yeah, so let's thank Jennifer Patton for working so hard, making this festival happen all these years. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Really, really just amazing. Another update is Altacal is beginning to move towards a new name and kind of drop Audubon from our name while still continuing to be a chapter of the National Audubon Society. And so this is something that we've been talking about for a long time. National Audubon has written tons of articles on some of the issues with John James Audubon, a bit of a racist legacy and disrespect for indigenous graves throughout time. So there were a lot of good reasons for it. And I wanted to read something that our former secretary, Carla Resnick, wrote, explaining the name change a little bit, because I thought she summarized the whole thing very well. So the Altacal Board of Directors, staff, and volunteers spent a lot of time in the past year and a half discussing a name change for our organization. We polled the wider community and received both support and rebukes. The people who do the work for the organization, the administrative work, the field trips, the nuts and bolts, day-to-day work, the things that keep the organization going, discussed the topic at great length and reviewed many options for new names. We chose Altacal Bird Alliance, which clearly represents what our mission is. Bird Alliance clearly states what we stand for. There is no ambiguity to an outsider who doesn't know what Audubon, the organization, or the person. We feel that clarity is incredibly important, especially going forward, so we can attract new birders to our organization and grow and support a thriving birding community who cares deeply about birds and their habitats and protecting them. And I want to take a moment to thank Carla Resnick for her amazing work as our secretary of the board for at least the last 2 years, if not longer. Yeah, if we could give a round of applause for Carla. Awesome. And so, yeah, I've started the name change process for us, filed the fictitious business name statement with the county clerk recorder. And so we will be doing business as Altacal Bird Alliance, but we will continue to officially, our organization will be called the Altacal Audubon Society, but we'll be doing business as Altacal Bird Alliance. So we'll change our logo and we'll be using that name to go forward. And we're really excited for that. We're really excited that our organization will be really inclusive of everyone and not turn anyone off of our organization or birding because of a tainted legacy of a man, John James Audubon, who had no role with forming this organization. It's actually a wonderful story, but there's not time for it now. And so now we are going to have our speaker, Jennifer Isola, who is a wildlife biologist at the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge. So yes, the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex made up of 5 national refuges and 3 wildlife management areas. Complex over 30,000 acres of habitat in the Sacramento Valley for the benefit of wildlife, plants, and the American public. Jennifer Isola is a wildlife biologist at the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex, where she has been working in the world of wetland and riparian habitat management since 1997. Her BS in wildlife management from Humboldt State University, along with her experience as a freelance artist, have helped Jennifer work across many of the refuge's programs. On any given day, she can be found monitoring wildlife and plants, making a map, analyzing population trends, creating outreach materials, teaching kids about conservation and art, or designing habitat restoration plans. Give a warm welcome for Jennifer Isola.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. As Jared mentioned, my name is Jennifer Isola. I'm a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I work at the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex, and I'm going on my 28th year there, so I've been there a long time. Click. So I'm just going to give, so can you go back one? Sorry. So topic tonight is Sacramento Complex, who we are, what we do, and all the good stuff we have to offer. So basically all of our visitor services and programs that we have. Okay, and so I'm going to start off with kind of an overview of the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex, the when, where, and why our refuges were established. So go ahead. We have 5 national wildlife refuges and 3 wildlife management areas that form our complex. So it all started with Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge. It was established in 1937. It's about 10,800 acres, and it was established primarily as wintering waterfowl habitat, and then secondarily to help provide an area to alleviate crop depredation on the surrounding agricultural fields. Over time, our objectives have evolved to include preserving flora and fauna diversity, to facilitate management-oriented research, and to provide threatened and endangered species habitat, and then to provide visitor services. And so the Fish and Wildlife Service has 6, what they call the Big 6. There are 6 visitor or public uses that are approved across the board and considered compatible on all national wildlife refuges. And so those are hunting, wildlife observation, photography, environmental education, interpretation, and fishing. I put fishing in parentheses because we don't have any fishing on Sacramento Refuge. That is one of our Big 6. Go ahead. And so Sacramento Refuge, I'm going to go over the visitor public use stuff briefly here, and I'll get into it a little bit more as we go on. But as an overview, Sacramento Refuge has our visitor center and our office headquarters for the whole complex. We've got an auto tour route, we've got trails, photo blinds. We allow bicycling part of the year. We have a designated hunting area and some seasonal trails as well. Our second refuge that was established is Delavan Refuge. It was established in 1962. It's just shy of 5,800 acres in size. It's also a wetland waterfowl refuge, so it has the same objectives as Sacramento Refuge. You'll see a theme here. And go ahead. The difference is Delavan Refuge is kind of isolated. Don't have a lot of visitor use opportunities out there. We have a hunting area and we have a photography blind, and people are welcome to drive the county roads and do some viewing from there, but it's a little difficult. There are plans to eventually develop like a pullout, maybe an overlook, but we need funding and time and people, but it's in the plans. Calusa Refuge was established in 1945, and it's just over 5,000 acres. It has the same objectives again, wintering waterfowl objectives, and it has quite a bit more visitor services and opportunities. There on Calusa Refuge, we've got our second auto tour of the complex. We have a trail, we have a photo blind, and we have a hunting area. And then moving on down south, we've got Sutter Refuge. Sutter Refuge lies down south of Yuba City, and it's within the Sutter bypass. So it's a flood diversion area that was created to divert floodwaters from the Sacramento River and slow them. And so that's why it's long and linear. Same wintering waterfowl, kind of wetland objectives. And then public uses that we offer on Sutter. Go ahead. Again, a little bit more limited. It's kind of isolated out there. We've got the hunt area, and then we offer seasonal trails after the waterfowl season is ended. And these seasonal trails are kind of cool. The two borrow channels here on either side of the bypass are really super wooded riparian areas. So it provides really cool bird watching in the spring and summer months, especially for neotropical migrants and songbirds. Then our newest refuge, Sacramento River National Wildlife Refuge, was established in 1989. I think now it's a little over 12,000 acres. We've just added a few more pieces of property. And so the river refuge is different than all the others. As you can imagine, it's not a wetland. It doesn't have a whole lot of wetlands associated with it. And so the objectives for the establishment of this refuge mainly was for threatened and endangered species habitat for species like the Chinook salmon, yellow-billed cuckoo, the valley elderberry longhorn beetle, those kind of things. And then another different objective is to protect and restore riparian habitat, which is the main habitat we have along the river. And the river, we have 30 units, different separate pieces of property. This is Red Bluff up here, and this is Calusa down here. So it spans 88 river miles. And most of the river refuge, the units they're landlocked or the roads go through private property. So most of it is only accessible by boat from the river. But we do have 7 units that have roads that go up to them. We have parking lots and trails on those. I don't know if you've been around and seen our Rio Vista unit or Ord Bend unit, kind of the ones at the crossings there, or the Ord Sol Norte and Cadora right there at the Butte City Bridge. So. And along with the Sacramento River Refuge, I didn't bring up. So the idea of a conservation easement, I don't know if you've all heard of these, but what for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, what it is we buy on private property the development rights. And so the land still belongs to the landowner. They still manage and use it as they did before, but they can't sell it, and it can't be, they can sell it, but the easement goes along with it. So it's like a perpetual conservation of that habitat. So the river's got about 1,200 acres of conservation easements under that refuge. And so that brings up the idea of the wildlife management areas, which were developed basically for developing conservation easements. So the Butte Sink Wildlife Management Area is down here. It lies at the base of the Sutter Buttes, and we've got about 10,000 acres of easements there. And those are mostly, well, I would say they're private waterfowl hunting clubs. but they're wetlands, and wetlands 95% loss in California. And so we own the development rights on those. So those are perpetually protected. And people still get to go out and hunt them and own them and manage them as they please, but they're protected. Within the Butte Sink Wildlife Management Area, we own one little property called the Butte Sink Unit. It is 733 acres. It was purchased solely for the purpose of providing wintering waterfowl habitat. And this little guy is small but mighty, that little 700 acre, I think it's like 500 something acres of wetlands. And it can hold up to 1 million birds out there. So it's just a gem of a little sanctuary out there. So, and then this is the longest. It used to be North Central Valley Wildlife Management Area, and that got renamed to Steve Thompson North Central Valley Wildlife Management Area. And I do all our data management, and I counted it out, and it's 28 characters long, the name. With our Seiko unit that we own out there. Anyway, the Steve Thompson North Central Valley Wildlife Management Area, it's huge. It goes all the way from Red Bluff down to Sacramento. And within that footprint, we can buy conservation easements. And we currently have about 15,000 acres of easements within that right now. And we own one property. Many of you have probably been out there. This is our Seiko unit. It's just about 15 minutes from Chico here, right on 7 Mile Lane, south of Ord Ferry Road. And the Seiko unit was established in 1989 along with the River Refuge. It's about 1,700 acres in size, and the objectives there are similar to our other wetland refuges for wintering waterfowl. And we have some visitor services out there as well. We've got a little parking area and an observation deck and a little trail, and no hunting out on that one. Okay. Well, almost there. Willow Creek Lure Line. That's our last wildlife management area. And those are just around Sacramento and Delavan refuges. And it just consists of just 5,800 acres of conservation easements. So it's just private, that's protected there. So when you add it all up, we've got about 38,000 acres of land that we own and manage, and 32,000 acres of easements that we kind of oversee and protect. You add those up, and we've got about 70,000 acres in a mosaic across the valley of wetland, riparian, and upland habitat that is in conservation. So, yay! So it gives Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex a meaning to the world. The word complex because it's complex. It's a lot of land to manage. So what does this mean in the bigger picture of things? So California, in the context of the Pacific Flyway, the Central Valley, which includes the Sacramento and the San Joaquin Valleys, supports about 60% of the Flyway's population every winter. And the Sacramento Valley supports the majority of that. You can see this is about 10 years old from a midwinter waterfowl survey. We don't do them anymore, so I have to lean on old data. But the green is the Sacramento Valley, what it supports for ducks, white geese, and white-fronted geese. So Sacramento Valley supports about 4 million ducks every winter. We're up to about 1 million white geese and 500,000 white-fronted geese. So it's really important for, with all the wetland losses that we have high quality habitats, and we manage them to the best of our extent to provide the most food and the most security for birds when they're down here. So that brings me to habitats that we manage. I'm going to use Sacramento Refuge as kind of an example because it kind of is representative of our other refuges. And so Sacramento Refuge in general is made up of about 65% managed wetlands, 32% floods, 2% what we call unmanaged wetlands. They're just kind of waterways and things that flood just because they flood because we're in the valley. And then 1% riparian forest. And so those things, I'll talk about each of those just a little bit. Riparian forest. So this is the map. So you can tell there's not a whole lot of riparian forest on the wetland refuges. It mostly lies along waterways and edges of wetlands. And it consists of, we got riparian scrub habitat, cottonwood forest, and mixed riparian forests. These habitats support, songbirds, nesting raptors, and then colonial nesting birds like great egrets and great blue herons and double-crested cormorants and such. And then we've got our uplands category. And so uplands category includes a bunch of different types of kind of subhabitats. Go ahead. This would include annual and perennial grasslands. They support a lot of local species, a lot of nesting species, and springtime grazing animals. Alkali meadows and vernal pools. And these are super important for a lot of our threatened and endangered species. They're kind of a rare habitat type left in the valley. They have the natural topography and gather natural rainwater, and then it dries up on its own. So we have some really, we have a lot of our beautiful vernal pool flowers. What is this guy? Tadpole, vernal pool tadpole shrimp, conservancy fairy shrimp. And then this is one of my favorite plants. It's called Chloropyron palmatum, palmate bracteodes bird tree. And it's in the monkey flower family. And it's this cool little salty plant. And it has a really narrow range that it grows in. And between Sacramento, Delavan, and Colusa refuges, we have 90% of the world's population of this plant. And you can't see it from where you're sitting, but there's little droplets on here. So it's out there in these super dry, fluffy, alkaline flats. And you go out there and you walk and your boots are just sopping wet and they're salty. And it's just this really cool plant, and it just emits like moisture and salt from its. So that's just my little favorite. And then the vernal pools are really great for shorebird habitat because they are so shallow and they're full of these great little crustaceans and invertebrates. So. And then kind of the big guy in our wetlands refuges, of course, are managed wetlands. And I use the word managed wetlands because unlike the vernal pools that flood with rainwater, when they put in Shasta Dam, they cut off the natural hydrology in the valley. So all the water that goes out onto the refuges, we have to put it on and take it off. And so every pond, we decide when it's going to get water. If it's going to, when the water is going to come off, and then if we're going to irrigate it. So our managed wetlands consist of, and it's shifted a little bit over the years. It's about 60% of them are what we call seasonal wetlands. At this point, it's about 20% are what we call irrigated seasonal wetlands. So it's a seasonal wetland that gets a little bit of water, kind of like your garden during the summer. And then 5 to 10% are semi-permanent, which stay wet most of the year. And then the permanent wetlands that stay wet all year long. So the seasonal wetlands, go ahead. They get drawn down in the springtime, and then on the mud flat, all the little seed-producing plants germinate. Go ahead. And then they get reflooded in the fall, and then they're flooded till the next spring drawdown. They're generally shallow in nature, 6 to 30 inches, depending, even within the same pond topography. Go ahead. And these grow moist soil plants in emergence. And then this is a picture of swamp timothy. It's a little tiny grass, and they're a great little seed producer, and they're really common on the pond bottoms. And so, go ahead. These have really good seed production. They also have really good invertebrate production, so they're great for, go ahead, a whole host of species. These provide the greatest abundance and the greatest diversity of wildlife that we have on the complex. So we'll get the ducks and the geese and also the shorebirds because of the shallow nature and that short little swamp timothy, so it's fairly open. And then, of course, the raptors that follow those birds. And I mentioned the irrigated seasonal, so that's basically just a seasonal wetland. And during the summer, go ahead, we give it a little bit of a drink of water. So that tends to go ahead. Well, it's shallow water as well. But it grows moist soil plants in emergence, but it grows the bigger ones like watergrass and smartweed. And they are really, really big seed producers. They provide a ton of food. And so these ponds have excellent seed and invertebrate production, especially you think about that biomass from that plant, and that all breaks down and provides habitat for the invertebrates. So super duper productive. And you think, well, why don't you irrigate all your wetlands? But then you see this and you think about those little shorebirds. There's really no habitat for those little shorebirds. So it's kind of a balance. Plus, these take more water. So it's a balance. So they provide for the highest densities of our wintering dabbling ducks. And they are a good intermittent source of habitat during that summer irrigation for our local breeding birds like the heron and egret greys. And then we come to our semi-permanent ponds. Go ahead. And so these guys, go ahead, are flooded through the spring and summer, and they're only drawn down for a little bit at the end of the summer into the fall, just so we can manage the vegetation. Go ahead. Dry portion of the year. They are also moderately shallow in their depth, but because they are flooded during the growing season, they grow a ton of vegetation, which is why we draw them down for a few months so that we can kind of set some of that back to kind of open them up and provide more habitat. Go ahead. So, but these do have good tuber. I think that's arrowhead plant, tuber production, and submergent production like sago pondweed. They provide for good duck pair and brood water. And they can be productive for wintering waterfowl. They're not as productive as the ones that produce a ton of seed, but they're still fairly productive. Most important function of our semi-permanent wetlands are for species like white-faced ibis colonies, tricolor blackbird colonies, and then giant garter snakes, which are a year-round resident and an aquatic. They're federally threatened species. And then we've got our permanent ponds. Of course, those are flooded permanently all year long. And permanent ponds flood year round, and we tend to manage those deeper. One reason is because the deeper it is, the less vegetative growth you have. Go ahead. Because they do get overrun with cattails and tules and just kind of get socked in, and then the habitat, even though it's there, is not super available for everybody. Because they're flooded year round, the nutrient system gets locked up. And because there's been no plants germinating, there's not a lot of plant resources, and then also not a ton of invertebrate resources because you haven't gotten the plants to germinate. So they have low seed production and invertebrate production, but they're really important to have a few of those across the landscape for our resident species like pond turtles. Go ahead. Okay. So managed wetlands, you can tell they're highly managed. We have to put the water on, we take the water off. I talked about all the vegetative growth. We get a lot of weeds growing. And so we have a couple of tools in our toolbox. Go ahead. This is where you're going to have to click a whole bunch. Water management, physical manipulation, chemical manipulation, biological manipulation, and fire manipulation. So go ahead. Water management consists of three things. You can click 3 times. Timing, depth, and duration. Go ahead. So timing, I talked a little bit about the different plants that we grow. When you draw down super early in the spring and the mudflats are a little cooler, you get the swamp timothy to germinate. Go ahead. And then if you draw down a little bit later into the spring and the soil is going to be a little bit warmer, you'll get the watergrass to germinate. So depth, of course, I mentioned the shallower it is. Oh, I didn't mention this. The greater the food availability. You think about when you're out there bird watching, you think about all those duck butts up in the air. Well, what's going on down below is their heads down there and they're foraging along the pond bottom, picking up all the food. So the shallower it is, the better the food availability. But the shallower it is, and this is what I mentioned, the more vegetative growth you get. The deeper it is, the less food availability because it's too deep. And you also have less vegetative growth. So some of those permanent ponds will manage that way so they don't just get kind of socked in with cattails and tules. And then duration just kind of means like how long into the year it's wet. And so the longer it's wet into that growing season, the more vegetative growth you have and the less productive it becomes. And within that framework of duration is the irrigation during the summertime. And we've had studies where just doing those irrigations will actually double the seed production of the wetlands. So it's a very effective tool. And then like those little plants, the swamp timothy, they can only handle about 1 week's irrigation. And then the watergrass and smartweed will actually grow up through the water column as it's being irrigated, so they can be wet for up to a month. And then, so not only do we use the water to encourage desirable plants, we use it to discourage undesirable plants like cocklebur. And so these are all baby smartweeds, and that's a little cocklebur in the middle, and you put water on them, and the smartweeds grow up through the water column, and then the cocklebur dies off. So you get 2 bonuses out of 1 irrigation. Physical manipulation, we do a lot of disking. We do a lot of this to open up thick vegetation. You can see, and that was in one of the slides I showed you before, there was a little open lane. We actually have to go out there and do that, because if you think of that field with all that vegetation and the birds fly in, like where do they land? Right? And so we make little lanes for them. And then the double bonus on that is when you're out on the auto tour route, we try to angle those lanes so you from the tour route can see down that lane and get some bird watching in. We also use the disking to kill undesirable vegetation like Bermuda grass. Mowing is another physical manipulation we do. We use it to kill cocklebur, and we also use it. It's really important for providing roosting habitat on the levees and the islands. And chemical manipulation, this is something we try to reserve for a last resort. We don't really like to do it, but sometimes there are plants like aquatic primrose that chokes our canal. So that's a canal at Calusa. That's our main delivery canal that gets all the water, the whole refuge. And that plant, if it grows 3 feet up in the air, it's grown 3 feet down under the water. So it just really chokes things up. It also dominates our semi-permanent wetlands. So this is a pond and there's water under there, but the animals can't get to it. So we have to spray sometimes. Go ahead. And then after treatment, that's that same canal. So we save it for last resorts, but it's effective. Other plants that we have to spray for, perennial pepperweed. This thing's got like a 12-foot taproot. It's just horrible. It's one of the only ways we can contain that. And then giant reed, you probably have seen that around the valley. That's the same thing, just a big gnarly plant that we actually have to hit that with fire, cutting it, digging it out, and spraying it to get it. And then it still comes back. It's not my favorite. Yes, Arendo. Oh. And then biological manipulation, mostly for us, that consists of grazing. We love our grazing animals. They do so many benefits for us. Cows we'll use to target grasses. They control invasive annual grasses, and they reduce the thatch, and they help recycle the nutrients in the even in the perennial grasslands, the native grasslands that we planted. After time, all the dead grass just builds up, and then they just aren't as productive and healthy. So they get out there and take care of that. We use sheep to control the kind of the flowering flower plants like yellow star thistle and pepperweed. We'll also, when the pond is drawn down, we can throw them out there and they'll eat up that aquatic primrose. So it makes it easier for us to get in there and disc it and control it. So, and then goats, we don't use goats very often because they eat absolutely everything. I know you've probably seen them in Lower Park here. And they are mainly used as like a fire management tool. So goats, they eat everything, which you don't want to have happen when you've paid so much money to restore habitat. And then last tool in our toolbox, fire manipulation. We use it for things like spring goose browse. If you go back, I'll show a picture. So we'll burn in the fall, and then in the spring we get tiny little grass shoots, and these are super high in protein, which is great for geese and widgeon and coots to kind of get ready, get the nutrients they need before they do their spring migration. And we use it to reduce overgrown vegetation, like in our semi-permanent ponds, especially the ones that the tricolor blackbirds like to nest in. If we burn them over water, then we get new growth, and they really like the fresh bendy cattail, because the rank cattail has, it forms like these little old leaf ladders that the predators can climb up and get in the nest. So they like the really young bendy cattail. So we've been really successful in implementing that in those ponds. We'll use it to reduce thatch. This is kind of a before, during, and after of the same, it's a native perennial sun that we planted on Calusa. Just kind of rejuvenates the habitat. And then the last thing we use fire for is to control weedy species. There's this one grass called Medusa head. It's an invasive grass. And if you get out and burn in May when the grass has grown and the seed's set, but it hasn't dropped, and you put fire through the unit, you'll get like a 95% effectiveness, and you'll have about 5 years of being weed free after that. So fire is a great tool when it's used properly. So I talked a lot about our wetland refuges. I'm just going to give a brief little through the river refuge because I could talk about that for hours, but I won't. So if you go back real quick, our refuge is located in what are called reaches 2 and 3 of the river. Go ahead. And this zone is known for, it's fairly flat, and we have lots of nice kind of malleable soils. So there are a ton of river meanders here in reaches 2 and 3, and that's kind of where we are. Go ahead. And because of this, there's a lot of geomorphic processes. There's a lot of erosion. There's a lot of avulsion. A lot of point sandbars get developed. A lot of cut banks get developed. Go ahead. And kind of have these nice patterns of vegetation. The little sandbars start growing a willow scrub. They later turn into cottonwood forest. And then, of course, the upper tiers are valley oak forest. Go ahead. So the river refuge obviously has much different types of habitat than the wetland refuges, and it's mostly centered around that riparian forest component. Go ahead. And about 50% of the river refuge are what we call remnant habitats. So they're the original native habitats that were there on the river, and we were able to acquire those. And 50% of our habitats are restored habitats. Go ahead. So what that means is we acquired a lot of flood-prone orchards along the river. These are properties that the ranchers no longer wanted to deal with because they kept flooding, and we acquired them. We worked with partners, a lot of work with Nature Conservancy and river partners, and we restored those. Go ahead. And went through processes of growing out plants and planting and then maintaining those. Go ahead. Over the years, so we maintain them for about 3 years. We irrigate them and keep them weed free. And then we have, go ahead, our habitat. And so the river, as opposed to the wetland refuges, is relatively low maintenance because once you get it established, it kind of takes care of itself. We still go in, we do a little bit of grassland and understory restoration, do some wildflower planting here and there. We do a little bit of grazing, a little bit of fire to help maintain the vegetation. Go ahead. We do a few projects here and there, floodplain restoration stuff, levee removal and swale restoration. Go ahead. And then the river doesn't have a ton of facilities, so we just do a little bit of facility maintenance out there. We have a few units that have, like I mentioned, those 7 units that have parking lots, and they really don't have much in the way of facilities. Go ahead. And so that brings me to our facilities and our recreation programs that we have for visitors. So the visitor center, yay! So brand new. And I mentioned that, so Sacramento Refuge is kind of the headquarters for the whole complex. We have a new visitor center there, and then Sacramento Refuge and Calusa Refuge have our 2 auto tour routes. Go ahead. Those are open year round. Sacramento Refuge, go ahead. Got a 6-mile auto tour. It's open year round. Go ahead. And along that auto tour, it'll just self-play. We've got park and stretch areas we can get out and explore. We've got a couple of observation decks and a bathroom, and excellent viewing of raptors and ducks and geese and shorebirds, then kind of year-round species. We got like pheasants and rabbits and deer. So there's always something to see out there. It does get a little dry during the summer months. Go ahead. So we open what we call our Pool 2 extension, and this goes around, well, generally managed as a permanent pond. So people have something to see during the summer months. It's especially well known for, we've got Western and Clark's grebes that do overwater nests out there, and there's, I don't say cute a lot because I'm a biologist. Not supposed to be anthropomorphic, but man, when those babies are on their back, they're so cute. And the other one's coming and feeding it fish. It's right there. So go ahead. And we got a lot of pelicans that are out there, piebald grebes nest out there, and of course we get our local herons and egrets that use the pond as well. Okay. Calusa has our other auto tour route. Go ahead. It's a 2-mile auto tour. It's open year round. And we've got kind of a little welcome area and a bathroom and then an observation deck there. Trails. We have a lot of trails. We have year-round trails at Sacramento Refuge, at Calusa Refuge, and at Llano Seco Unit, and then those 7 river units that I mentioned as well. Go ahead. And then we've got some seasonal trails that we open up in the hunt areas at Sacramento and Calusa, or Sacramento and Sutter Refuge. And they're open February 15th through June 30th each year. So trails at Sacramento Refuge consist of, go ahead, got 2 miles of trails. They're open year round, and they kind of meander through a little wetland area and up into a riparian zone, and then down and around a little vernal pool area. And then on the south end, we've got our seasonal trails, and they kind of meander down through, this is all kind of really neat, kind of native habitat, a lot of vernal pool species and stuff out there. So that's kind of a fun area to go in the spring. And then Calusa Refuge, we just have a, go ahead, we've got a tiny little trail out there. It's a 1/2 mile out and back, but along there we've got this nice little like a viewing deck that kind of goes out into the wetland and you can have an overview of the wetland. The birds are starting to get used to it now, so it's kind of fun. And then Llano, we've got a 1 mile out and back trail there as well, along with an observation deck, a little kiosk, and a restroom. There's a little mound at the end of the trail with a little picnic table out there too. And if you've been out to Llano, you know it's really popular for sandhill crane viewing. So, Sutter Refuge, we've got seasonal trails down there in the hut area, and I mentioned it's really great. We have this riparian loop here that kind of goes along the bypass, and it's got really great viewing of the neotropical migrant birds. Go ahead. Like grosbeaks and flycatchers. And we even have yellow-billed cuckoos down there, which are really hard to see because they're really quiet, but they're really neat. And then the Sacramento River, we got those 7 units that have all kinds of trails. That's our Rio Vista unit there at the South Avenue crossing, Pine Creek unit right on Highway 32, Capay, kind of harder to find. It's along Highway 45 just south of Hamilton City, or Ord Bend unit there at Ord Bend. And then we've got trails on Sol Norte, Cadora and Packer units right there at the Butte City Bridge. And they're all still open despite them building a gigantic new bridge on the refuge property. But they're still there. And then bicycling. We offer bicycling on basically our 2 auto tour routes and then on those the river units. And that's just seasonal. We only offer it from May 15th to August 15th because, as you can imagine, somebody riding their bike along an auto tour route with 1 million birds is going to be very worrisome to the birds, and all the birds fly away. So but we do offer bicycling. And then photography, really, really popular. Some of the best opportunities are driving the auto tours and using your vehicle as your like portable blind. And then the observation decks at Sacramento and Calusa and Llano Seco, the birds have become acclimated to people being out there, and you can get really, really great photographs of birds, like really up close. Go ahead. We do have 4 reservable blinds on the complex. We've got 2 at Sacramento, 1 at Calusa, and 1 at Delavan. So, but those are going to be closed this year because we just don't have staff. Environmental education program that's based out of Sacramento Refuge at our visitor center. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then hunting. So we offer hunting in the designated hunting areas on Sacramento, Delavan, Calusa, and Sutter, and that's only during the designated waterfowl hunting season. It's open Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and the hunters have to go through the hunter check station, so it's very regulated. And then we do offer, availability of our lands for hunting along Sacramento River Refuge. I mentioned access on the River Refuge is mostly via boat from the river, so it's people want to do that, they have to really get out there to do it. And mostly that's for deer and turkey that people like to go out there and go hunt to. So that is that. That brings us to our new visitor center and headquarters. So we started this process in 2017. And you go, what on earth were you doing for the last 7 years? Oh my God. It's been a process. But we started in 2017. We did some planning tours. We toured Ash Meadows, Desert, Bear River, San Luis, and Stone Lakes Refuges. And we did this because we wanted to kind of go out and check out what other places had that we thought might be valuable for us and our needs. And I'll tell you, at the time, I thought it was kind of silly and like, we don't have time to do this, but there were so many takeaways. I think that first picture was they were restrooms on the exterior of the building. So they're always available for visitors, and they were kind of protected and sheltered, so they weren't just exposed. Another thing was like this covered patio that provides a space for visitors to get in the shade or out of the rain, and for classes to work outside when the weather is not cooperating. And then we had things like this great big, like super tall ceilings in the visitor center, just a nice open, airy feel. Go ahead. And things like just how to do these display panels, like how to tell your refuge story and to guide people through that. And then to offer them information on what they're seeing on the habitats and the animals. And then the bookstore. We know it's hard. Previously, it was really hard for us to have the bookstore because it was part of the visitor center and it was always open. There was always stuff, but we couldn't always staff it. And so we came away with the idea of doing something like a bookstore that we could keep closed if we had to, or it could be open. And then the environmental education classroom, that was a big one for us. We wanted a dedicated space for that because we used to host about 4,000 students a year that would come through on our programs. We're starting to rebuild that now since we haven't had a building, and before that it was COVID. So we're kind of getting back to it. And then one of our final takeaways that we really loved was when you're in the visitor center and you've toured through it, you end up at a place with big windows that invite you to go back outside and explore the outside. So it's not just about being inside, getting a message, being told stuff, but encouraging people to get out and explore. So with that, we developed 2 conceptual plans. The first one was this great big, giant, brand new building. And then, it's the federal government and things happen, and that died. And then we had to develop plan number 2, which was a remodel and expansion of our current building. And that actually fit the bill much better. So in February of 2022, construction started. Took down the original building. Bye. And started building the new building. And oh my God. But we did it. We finally made it. Yay. And here it is. Go ahead. So we've got our 20 January of this year. Construction was complete. We started moving in, which is easier than it sounds. That was a big task. But there it is. New visitor center. And so go ahead. We are currently the visitor center is only open Thursdays and Fridays as we try to rebuild our visitor services staff and try to rebuild our volunteer program. We're going to try to have it open more days, but it's still in the same place. So if you've been out to the refuge, it's going to be right there in the same exact place. You come on in, you follow the sign to the visitor parking, you park, and you walk down that same exact path that you used to walk down. Go ahead. And that's what you see from the visitor parking lot. And as you come up, you'll see we've got our nice little covered porch and our logos. We have nice big double doors. This is our very first installation of one of our interpretive designs. They're called lenticulars. So it's kind of like Cracker Jacks, when you moved it and it kind of shape shifted the image. So we've got those. That was a project that Friends of the Refuge was able to fund for us. So we're excited. We have one display done, but we're working on all the other ones. And as you come up towards the new visitor center, we have the same old benches. We were able to keep those in the shade of the willow trees because everybody likes to kind of sit there and gather. And then go ahead. We're working on getting a new little kiosk built kind of as you come in. It'll have our little welcome panel. So if the visitor center is not open, you'll still have a welcome and kind of understand where you are. It'll have a whiteboard where we can do bird sightings. It'll have a little bulletin board with new news. Go ahead. And then we've got this, I love our covered patio because the old building, it was like you just walked up to it. It was south facing. It was so hot. And this, even in the heat of this awful summer, you will walk out there and it was actually not that hot. And then we also have within that this great little built-in covered bench that's going to look over our upcoming native plant garden. Go ahead. And we're planning to install the bird feeders again. So there'll be some birds to look at and you can sit there and just enjoy all of that. And then we have those exterior restrooms that are still accessible 7 days a week. And they're kind of sheltered and covered back there. And we even put in a little bench so you could sit and wait for your friend while they take forever. And then we're going to be reinstalling our picnic benches and putting in a new little gravel area. So that's coming. And that's kind of it for the outside. So I'll take you inside. And so this is our new visitor center. You walk in and it's just a great big hall, kind of what we wanted with a big open area feeling. Right now we just have posters along the walls that show all the different displays that are currently being built. At the far end, we have our information desk where we'll have volunteers and visitor services staff available to answer questions and give people guidance. And then on the right-hand side, we've got that bookstore that we wanted. Right now it's closed because we're working on trying to get it open back up again. But it's there and all the stuff's there and we're excited. So the visitor center, the displays that we're working on, they're under contract, they're being built. We're hoping they'll get installed by the end of the year. And so as you go in on your left-hand side, that's kind of where our story is going to start. It'll start, go ahead. It'll start kind of over here, talking about things at the flyway level. So it'll be a neat interactive panel where you can tap on different species and see their migration paths and learn about them. And then it'll move on to kind of the Sacramento Valley, the refuge history. We'll have a model of our cool fire tower. And then we'll move into the wetland riparian habitat panel so you can learn about the habitats we have. At the base of that, we're going to have what's called Stories of the Valley, and you can be a listening station. So you can listen to stories of different valley residents and kind of their perspectives and experiences on living in the valley. And then in the middle of the floor there, we'll be having, go ahead, be a big kind of like a big cylinder. It'll be interactive, so you can turn the inside of the cylinder and learn about the different seasons of a wetland, kind of what you'd see, kind of the processes that happen every season. And then on the back, it'll describe some of those tools that I talked to you about that we use to manage all those habitats. And then on your left-hand side, you come in and we'll have kind of more displays, kind of the extra stuff that we wanted to include. Go ahead. And so we'll have a display with another interactive panel on our rare residents, which are like threatened and endangered species. So you can tap on that and learn all about those. And we'll have a panel on the duck stamp. We'll have a panel on partnerships. I can't remember what the other one was, but just more stuff to learn about. Okay. And then if you go on past our information desk, you'll end up in, go ahead, what we're calling our multi-purpose room. So it's a great big space. We're super excited. The only big function we've had so far is we had a retirement party for somebody. But a great big space where we can have workshops and classes and events. But there'll be this really cool folding wall in the middle. Go ahead. That divides it in 2 rooms. So we'll have what's called our discovery room that'll be permanently kind of part of the visitor center. People will go through there. There'll be a little door right here into our environmental education classroom. And we'll have kind of our little wet station here. The kids can do their activities, some whiteboards and stuff. Go ahead. And so that folding wall we're going to make use of that, and we're going to put interpretive materials on that. Go ahead. It's going to be a great big mural, kind of a cross section of the valley, going from wetlands to uplands to riparian habitat down to the river, and then all the species that we have across the valley, and I'll have little species accounts, and then we'll have another little listing touch station where you can learn about all those species a little bit more. Oh, you can go back one more. And then on the other wall, so this is kind of the discovery room, right? So it's a little bit more hands-on stuff people can do and interact with instead of just looking and learning. And so we're going to have our kids corner. We're excited about that. I'll have books and stuffed animals and Velcro things and magnets and little lily pad chairs, something for the little ones to do. And then we'll have our little come explore station. We're excited about that. They'll have tubs of things that people can just take out and look at and do. Microscopes, fish tanks, skulls and skins and feathers and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be the discovery room. And then from there, we are going to go ahead, build access to our discovery pond. So we're in the process of doing this. We haven't gotten there yet, but we want to build either a boardwalk out into the pond or like a gravel slope where the students can go out with dip nets and kind of have a hands-on experience with a habitat. They can look for invertebrates or fish or crawdads or whatever's out there. So it's kind of more kind of get out and explore type of thing. Go ahead. So that was it for the visitor center part of it. I'll give you a little sneak peek into the other side of it. These are our new offices. A lot of the stuff we saw on the tour, we kind of incorporated in this, like great big wide hallways that we can use kind of as a community space for filing, a temporary kind of seating area for people, seasonal people or just researchers that come in. We used a lot of the artwork from previous employees, the photographs, put those up. And a nice copy room, just kind of a nice big open communal space for working together. We've got offices, they're small but super functional. We have a specified office for our volunteers. It's got a little one-way glass that looks over the visitor center so they can sit in there and kind of keep track of what's going on out there. Go ahead. And then we finally have a dedicated staff break room and staff conference room. And it has another one of those retractable walls so we can combine the space, which is super exciting because our last building had one room and it was a break room, conference room, environment education classroom, and discovery room, all in one. So we're so excited to actually have some space to do the things that we need to do. So that's it for like the building and the inside of the building. On the outside of the building, this is kind of our next big project that we're going to be working on. We're fortunate Jared came out, and Deb Halfpenny and Mary, I can't say her last name. Ryazinski, Buchanan Master Gardeners, came out and took a look at our space, and we talked through some conceptual planning stuff, helped give us some guidance on some ideas that we might take forward, which was really awesome. So we're going to have about a 1/3 acre of native planting. We're going to be featuring what we call local ecotypes. And so these are plants that are specifically adapted to our climate and our soils, which is really important because we have salty clay soils. It's very, not a lot of things can live in our salty clay soils very well. And so I'll use one plant as an example of this. It's Grindelia camporum. It's a gum plant. It's a great pollinator plant. And it grows in the Colusa Basin, in the wetland areas, and it grows along the river. Technically, it's the same species, but if you take, and they look a little bit different. The one in the Colusa Basin is fairly short, really compact, really dark. And then the stuff along the river is taller and more open and leggy. And if you take those seeds and plant them in the opposite place, they don't do as well. But they're technically the same species. So we'll be trying our best to get locally sourced seeds and grow those out for our garden. We'll be putting in 2 accessible trails. So that means packed granite, probably decomposed granite trails out there. And then we're going to be putting in kind of a little single track discovery path through the plant garden so people can get out and actually get up close to the plants and check them out. Dry creek bed, that's actually already installed. That's going to be for drainage, not for the garden itself, but the front of the building. We put in this building with a huge sloped roof, which we didn't have before, and didn't realize how much runoff that it's going to generate. We had a little flooding issues this last year. So we put in this cool dry creek bed. It's going to look neat out there. It's going to all drain all that stuff into the discovery pond for us. We'll also be putting in those bird feeders and then our picnic table area. So we're super excited. We've got all kinds of ideas. I can go ahead. We're working towards getting all this all done using partners and different funding sources. Of course, Altacal already been out, been very helpful. Probably using some funds. I think we still have some funds in our account. Volunteers, we'll have volunteer opportunities if anybody wants to come out and help us in the future. Friends of the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge, that's our nonprofit partner. They've been doing a lot of fundraising. They're facilitating finding contractors for this because we just don't, like, I'm good at doing habitat restoration, native stuff, but I don't know how to make a garden with irrigation and paths. So they're helping facilitate that, and they've got volunteers hopefully available for that as well. We've got some funds from federal highways. We're doing a new entrance road this next year. We'll be doing new kiosks as you come in and new signage. So we got a lot going on. So all volunteers are going to be welcome for all kinds of different things, planting, maintenance, working in the visitor center. We got all kinds of opportunities for rebuilding that program because it has been shut down for the last couple of years. And master gardeners are welcome too, because I really could use some help with figuring out how to plant this garden. So that's it. That's our new visitor center. Super excited. Yay! That's it. All right, any questions?
Oh, we do have one question in the chat. It's about the windows.
Yes.
Don Garcia. Don Garcia says, yes, Jennifer, way to go. She says, I'm sure these are bird-friendly windows. And then she's asking about education, about bird strikes, or she's wondering about the windows. Are birds going to be flying into the windows?
Yes, all of our windows, I don't know, you probably couldn't see it from any of the photos, but they all have etched dots on the glass. So I think this whole time we've been in since January, I think I heard one thud. I went out there and the bird must have recovered itself. So with all those windows we have all around the building, no real bird strikes. So nice. They're working. Yay.
Yay. Any other questions?
I'll start on the left.
When do you start filling the ponds at SAC?
Oh, the ponds are already being filled at SAC. We've got water. I'm so excited because we've always been so slow at getting the ponds around the observation deck flooded up because it's a little tricky just because of our water delivery system. But we've worked really, really hard this year, and there's already water on the pond to the left of the deck. There's already water on the pond to the right of the deck, and there's already lots of birds. So they're coming. Yeah, it's coming. So every week between now and November, there'll be new ponds being flooded. And one of the reasons we kind of do this delayed flood up is you think about all those seeds, and if you put water on them, they start to decay. So as we flood up according to the new birds that start to arrive. So as the new birds arrive, we have fresh habitat for them, and it's just a much more effective way of providing that. Yes?
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Is Calusa going to be open?
Yes.
Is it open?
Yes.
And then the second one is pontoons. Can you still go around now?
Pontoon we just closed this week. So it's a seasonal extension. We do it just for the summer months, and then as soon as the rest of the auditor starts to get water, we close that and then let people just go on the rest of the auditor.
How long do the pelicans stay? Are they gone already?
Oh, that's a good question. They'll stick around. They just move around. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned volunteer opportunities. How does somebody find out about that?
Oh, so right now we have, if you look on our website, if you just Google Sacramento NWR, I think there'll be something on the left that'll say get involved. And even I think we have an alert right in the very middle that says we're advertising volunteer opportunities on whatever, volunteer.gov. Anyway, there's a form on there. And I think there's a description of kind of the different things, but I can get you in contact.
You can also ask Jared.
Nikki too.
I'll connect you with Jared.
Yeah. Llano Seco. Okay, so Llano Seco, that's one of our last refuges to flood up, and that almost always typically starts on October 1st. So that's when the viewing pond there at the deck, the water starts in. It starts on the northwest corner. That's where the water comes in, and so it just starts to trickle in. Takes about 14 to 20 days for that unit to flood up. And then some of the other ponds, I think they've got like a 10-15 flood up date. So by the end of October, it should all be hopping.
So what was your question? They're asking me to repeat the question. Is that Llano Seco?
Oh, the question.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. So John just asked about when Llano Seco will be flooded.
That's
So they
one.
asked if you could repeat questions.
Oh, I'll try my best. Yes. Oh, and then Calusa, I think that question was if that's going to be open. And Calusa, I think, already has water on its pond where the viewing platform is. We got water early there. So water's starting. And I think Tom was going to start disking those water grass units that are on the middle of that tour loop. Same idea, just disking some lanes for the birds and for viewing. So he was going to be working on that this week. Though I'm not sure when the water shows up out there. So yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Are you giving your full allotment of water for all the refugees this year?
Yeah. Question was if we're getting our full allotment of water for the refuges this year. So yes, we are. Yes.
I wanted to ask, so I went to the California Audubon presentation and they were talking about, there's been a lot of focus on the migratory waterfowl habitat. And they're trying to increase the focus on irrigating for the shorebirds, that different seasonality.
Right.
needs. I was wondering if you guys are incorporating shorebird.
Yes.
needs
Yes.
while this-
Especially the last couple of years, we really started to try to work that into our flood up schedule. And shorebirds tend to start migrating in August. And so we're trying to incorporate not only some habitat to flood up in August, but the appropriate habitat to flood up in August. So those big kind of shallow ponds that the shorebirds like, yes. And then April is kind of their migration out. So we've always tried to target the drawdowns to provide that shallow mudflat habitat in April. Yeah.
How about returning floodwater to the river? I know Cal Trout and California Audubon have been working with that, done some experimental work that's actually shown really promising results. Where they're putting, the fields are flooded, they're full of invertebrates back to the Sac River. That's feeding, are you joining in that? Is that a future?
Yes. Yes, and yes, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of momentum behind that for the endangered salmon. And yeah, there's a bunch of different studies going on. And so, yeah, physically, some of the refuge it's a lot longer journey to make it back to the river, but the water generally does make it back to the river. Yeah. Yep.
What extent do you work with the California Park Service or with the state service?
Oh, like Department of Water Resources?
Well, I'm thinking more like Gray Lodge and.
Well, sure. So Gray Lodge, of course, that's California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So it's a state refuge, whereas we're federal. But yeah, we do work with them quite a bit, and we have meetings and kind of coordinate some of our activities. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer.
Welcome. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Good to be here.
Awesome, yeah, 70,000 acres, that's a lot of habitat.
That's a lot of stuff to keep track of.
I know.